Alright, so this is what we're going to build today, and I made 4 of them because, you know, a lot of things when you make them, if you might as well make more than one, because when you set the sizes and the jigs up, you know, you might as well make several copies. So I made 4. These are just regular Langstroth type hives, and they've got a deep, a medium, of course the bottom board, a cover, inner cover, and the galvanized top. Alright, let's get started. These are our boards cut to width and length. These are for the deeps, and these are for the medium supers. And those of you that know my channel know that I have a sawmill, and so I use wood that I cut myself. So I didn't show cutting all this up because it started out as rough lumber and I had to plane it and all that. So let me just tell you the sizes on these. Like if you're going to make a deep, you want to start with probably a 1x12. Well, you're going to have to start with a 1x12 because you need them to be 9 5/8 wide, and then they're 19, well, the long ones are 19 7/8, and the short ones are 16 1/4. Now the plans for this is the plans right here, and they're available online from bsource.com. 10-frame Langstroth beehive. So I did not come up with these plans. You can get them off of their website. They've got a bunch of different plans for a lot of different bee-oriented projects. Okay, so here's your deeps, and the deeps are 9 5/8 wide, and then the mediums are 6 5/8 wide. The long ones and the short ones are 6 5/8 wide, and the lengths are the same as for the deeps. In other words, the short ones are 16 1/4 long, and the long ones are 19 7/8 long. Now, I have you really only need 2 of each one of these in order to make a box. I'm going to make 4 of each one. You know, when you're making stuff like this, you know, I'd be better off probably making 10 of each one, but I don't need that many right now. Because, you know, setting up can take you just as long as doing the actual cuts. Alright, so that's our wood cut. The next thing we're going to do is get box joints cut on the ends. So in order to make a box joint, we're going to use a dado blade. And this is set to 3/4 of an inch wide. This is a stack blade. You can also use the wobble blades. And like I said, it's set to 3/4. I've got a piece of scrap wood attached to my miter gauge, and the first thing I'm going to do is just run it through. Oh, I've got the height of it set by just take 2 pieces of whatever wood it is you're going to run through there, and I've got it set. You can see it'll just move that blade when you run it over the top. That's how I got my height set. Alright, so the first thing I've got to do is just run this straight through the blade. Now, this is a couple of little blocks of wood that I cut it to exactly 3/4 of an inch wide, like that. I got X's on the top so I know which way is the top. And this should just slide right, yeah, it slides right in that hole. Now, we're going to take this loose. Slide it over, and we want to place you want to get it so you've got just the width. So we place that against the blade, and then slide this over till it just touches, and then clamp it back down. In order to get those clamps out of the way, I just put a screw in through this back board to hold this in place. Now we're set up and ready to cut. So we don't need our extra little block for these. We're going to start with the long ones, and
And it's important that you do the long ones without the little block. I'll show you how to use that next. We put it in here to space us over. But these just butt right up against your pin, and we're going to start running them. Now, it's important when you get that done, we got to do the other end. So, we want to be sure that we just roll it just like this, slide it over, and start. Now we're going to cut the short pieces. And in order to do that, you want to take your extra little block and you set it right next to the other pin. Line your piece up next to that. You make your first cut, then you remove that, slide it over, make your next cut, and then up and over like you've been doing all the rest of them. Alright, let me show you that. Alright, that's got all our box joints cut, and obviously it would help if you glue this in. I didn't want to take the time to have to let it dry, but you saw I lost it a couple of times. Alright, the next thing we've got to do is cut the rabbets on the short sides where our frames will drop in. Alright, I'm set up to cut the rabbets for the frames to sit in in the boxes. And so what I did was I added a piece of wood to my fence so that I didn't have to get my dado head exactly the right thickness. So then I just pull this over and measure 5/8 off of this edge to the edge of that, and then I bring it up and I cut into this board until I get to 3/8 of an inch deep. And all I did was just take a little piece of scrap and run it and check that depth until I got it where I wanted it to be. So now I'm ready. It's 3/8 deep, 5/8 wide, and I'm going to put those rabbets into the side of these boards. Now, you're using the short. Let's see. You're using the short boards, and I've stacked them all up. A little bit of sawdust under there. I've stacked them all up to make sure that I've got them all oriented the same way. And then it doesn't matter whether you put the rabbet on this side or the bottom side, as long as you're consistent for all of them. And then you put it on the inside, and inside doesn't matter. Inside could be this side or it could be this side. But you know, you might have a knot or something that you'd rather put to the inside where you can't see it. Alright, so I'm going to get these running. I'm going to start nailing these up, and to kind of help me out here a little bit, I just put a scrap of wood here, took a square, put another scrap of wood, and you want to be sure you've opened it up so the corner is open. And then you can bring a piece in here, glue it, come in, and you can put your fasteners in because you've left this open right here. And so if I do each corner this way, it should be pretty much square when we get through. I'm using this Elmer's Wood Glue Max. You can also use the Type Bond 3 is also waterproof. This is just what I happen to have. So That's what I'm going to use. Yeah. Got some paper that I cut to kind of keep it off my bench. Alright, I've used a couple of clamps to get this to pull up. You may have to do the same. So this is our bottom board. This piece of the bottom board, as you look on the plans, is 22 by 16 1/4. And so I've done I ran a dado down through here so that you can actually reverse this, and it'll have a 3/4 opening. If you use it this way, you've got a 3/4 opening. If you flip it over, you've got a 3/8 of an inch opening. And I ran a rabbet down both sides in order to hold that, and then the back I didn't. I'm just going to put it on straight like that. And I'm just going to use some 1 1/4 staples to hold that together. Just making sure my spacing is right on the front because it doesn't actually get a board. Alright, now our telescoping lid. So, let's see. Put a little glue on here. Give us some 1 1/4 staples. I'm going to attach this. Alright, this is the inner cover. I got them stacked here. I'm going to get one of them marked for the holes. Now, let's see. Let me mark the center. Well, let's see. The 9 1/2 should be the center that way. Yeah. Okay, and this is 15 3/8. So that's 7 1/2 plus 3/16. So 7 1/2 plus 3/16. Yep. Alright, now this is supposed to be 3 1/2 inches long and 1 1/4 in diameter. So, 1/2 inch and 1/4 is 5/8. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll come out, okay, half of 3 1/2 is 1 3/4. Alright, so we'll do 1 3/4. 1 3/4, and in between that is 3 1/2. Okay, so then to put this bit, we need to come in 5/8 from there to right there. And right there. So then when we drill that, put that right there, it comes out, let's see, it comes out at 3.5. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is stack all these up and do them all at the same time. Alright, so I got it clamped together. I'll get over to the drill press and get these drilled out. Okay, I'm going to have to use my hand drill because my throat on my drill press isn't deep enough to do these. Alright, so then we just want to take a ruler and connect these two lines. Connect these two circles with a line. Like that. And then we'll cut that out. And there you go. Okay, so this is our inner cover. How that thing's called? Yeah. This is our inner cover, and these I tried to put that dado right down the middle, but I missed a little bit. But it doesn't matter at all. And I did it a little bit different than the plans. They didn't really show how to connect this to it, so I just did it the way I wanted to. They did a half-lap joint in the corners, which probably would have been stronger, but I didn't really want to do that. So I just ran a dado down the middle to hold this plywood, and that is 3/8 of an inch deep, and then I mitered the corners on my miter saw. And I'll just slide it aside and let it dry. Now, so the rain will run off, I'm going to bevel them on one side. Okay, there it is. And that would have been a lot easier to do if I'd done it when it was long. So if you make some of these, do this part when it's still a long board. It'll be safer and quicker. Okay, so I've marked the middle of this and then the middle of my board here, and I don't want to have to measure every one of them. So now I'm going to take a scrap and I can now line this up. I've got a mark here of where the middle of this is and the middle of this. So now I just come over here and make a mark. And so if I will just line this up with the top, which is just an arbitrary distance down, it's about, well, it's 1 3/4 inches down from the top. And then if I just line this up right there and get everything lined up, I can just shoot these down. I do have to make sure I got my bevel up. And the up is where my rabbets are, where my frames fit in. This is a little different than what was in the plans. They showed just running a board across here, a squared board, which would be a whole lot easier. But this, I feel like this will shed the water a little bit and keep it from rotting. I thought about cutting the D handles into the side. Would have been a lot more work. And the other thing is when you cut that D handle, the wood that's left in there is like 1/8 of an inch thick to the inside. So I thought maybe these might even last a little bit longer. So anyway, that's the handles I decided to use. All right, it's the next day, and these are nice and dry. And I want to kind of clean up these box joints a little bit. When you make a box joint, you usually leave the tongue sticking out proud, just a little bit of the thing, of the other wood. These are pretty even actually, but to me, you can sand these off, but to save time, I usually use a router to do that.
I'm using a trimmer bit like you would use for trimming Formica with the ball bearing on the bottom. All right, let's get one of these trimmed. And you can see that makes it nice and flat. And I'll just continue to do all the edges. Okay, I'm making galvanized tops for the tops of my hives. And this is, I made it harder than it had to be because I'm cheap. This is some old ductwork that I had in the attic, so that I wasn't using. So I'm using it and it's all curled up. So if you're going to do this, I would suggest you get some flat sheet metal. Probably the best place to do that is to look in your local area for a air conditioning supply house, and they should sell this by the sheet. If this intimidates you, don't worry about it. Just paint this lid and don't mess with even putting the metal on the top of it. So what I'm doing right now is I've trimmed these ends, and I've got 4 inches hanging off this end, and I've marked 4 inches. Now you can cut this with a pair of tin snips. I've got a brake that I use to cut it with and also bend it with. But you can actually make surprisingly good bends by just bringing, that's what I used to do before I had that brake, is you bring this over here to the edge. Well, let me show you. Bring it over to the edge, get it lined up, and clamp this down or get somebody to stand on it or something like that, and then just take a hammer and keep banging along, and it'll keep bending up until you get it up there really good, and then turn it and just keep doing that. It actually works really well. If you use something like a rubber mallet, it's going to help you get a better finish on it. But I'm going to bend this on my brake, and I'll take you in there and show you that here in just a second. Alright, so I'm sure a few of you are going to have something like this, but I've had this thing for years. I got it from Grizzly a long time ago. And it does a nice job. Alright, that's got one side done. Okay, that's got those two done. Okay, we got our sheet metal bent. And now we're going to get it attached. And I'm just going to use a rubber mallet to help me pull that around. Now these are just some little galvanized nails, and they're too long. So I'm going to just nip them off. And they'll still work, but I'm going to use another one to get it started. Oops. And that's all it'll take to secure that, and I just do that to all 4 corners. Okay, so that's got our lids made. Now the one thing about this particular design is you can get a little water in these corners. So another way you can do it is, let's see, these corners were actually folded, and I started doing it that way, and you know, I'm not real skilled at doing this, so I didn't like the way they were turning out. Like this one, see, it didn't get very tight. It got a little cattywampus there, so I kind of quit doing that and went to doing this, and this is probably the way that I would do it. All right, we're here. They are all painted and ready to go. Got our galvanized tops on there, our inner cover, mediums, deeps, and bottom boards, and then, you know, probably I've got a couple of nukes coming, And so I'll probably put a nuke in, you know, one of each medium box, and the next thing I'll do is take one of these medium boxes and put it on top until they fill up, and then I'll split it out to something like this. But anyway, I hope it works out well. Hope this video was interesting to you. Thank you for watching.